Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming at you with another Wargaming in miniature video. In today's video, we are going to do an experiment, a comparison, a review, a test, a trial run, whatever you want to call it. But what I personally would like to learn is which of these olive drab sprays has the best look in my opinion. I have tried a number of different olive drabs over the years and I've had varying results, different shades, different darknesses, different actual colors of the olive drab. So what I've done today for you and for me is I've gathered some olive drab spray paints from different manufacturers, and what we're going to do today is we're going to put them to the test. That test is I'm going to spray 8 swatches of olive drab on this white board, so there should be no distortion with gray primers or brown primers or black primers. This is white, so I should get a true color when I prime this. I'm just going to give it each one like a little spray with each of these different colors, and we'll compare them. We're going to take a close look at them, and we're going to try to figure out which ones are probably the closest olive drab to what I personally like. But I'm going to do it on video for you so that you can make your own judgment, your own comparison, and figure out which olive drab you like for your projects. Once we compare the dried olive on the whiteboard here, once I figure out which ones I think are the top, the best, the closest to what I'm looking for, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some of these Sherman hull tops. I've got a few Shermans. I even have a couple of M8 armored cars. So I want to spray those with maybe the best 4 or 5 that I think is the best in my opinion. And then we'll compare them on the plastic as a primer. And then once those are dry, then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to apply a dark green wash. This will be thinned down, so it'll be about it'll have a couple of drops of thinner in it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash them. So it's flow aid actually. Once the flow aid and the wash dries, then I'm going to come back and we're going to take a look at those primed hulls just to see what results the dark green put on my top favorites. Seems like a long process. I've got all day. I'm going to edit out dry times. Should be enjoyable. All right. So the first step I need to do is clean my workspace. I sprayed this. This is a palette that I spray miniatures and everything else on, and it was actually kind of a gray color. So this morning I went ahead and sprayed it with white flat just to bring it down into a usable palette for this experiment. Okay, so we're going to do that palette. Now, these colors, you can see that they have a various cap color, and one thing I've learned is don't trust the cap. And that's why I've gotten these paints out. That's another reason why, is because even though I think this might be the best looking one in general, or maybe this one, or maybe this one, that doesn't mean it's actually going to be a good spray. Okay, but to get started, I'm going to align them in a way where I'm going to kind of experiment in my head here, in my head cannon, so that when I spray on here, the similar colors are going to be beside each other so that I can get a a close comparison. I don't want to have similar colors on the edges because I won't actually be able to, I won't be able to choose which of the two would be best. So I want all the similar colors to be close so that it would improve my chances of picking the best one. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Now, this Krylon camouflage olive cap anyway, is really dark. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the upper left-hand corner. That looks like it's fairly dark. If you trust Vallejo's olive drab brush-on paint, which this is supposed to have 100% compatibility with, the brush-on olive drab is extremely dark, but not as dark as that. So I'm going to put those two beside each other on my swatch. All right, now for those of you following along at home, I'm going to make sure I let you know what each of these colors are. This one here is a Tamiya color. It is olive drab number 2, and that looks extremely green. That looks green, right? So less drab, more olive. So I'm going to put that in the bottom right, the furthest from those guys. Now this one is the Humbrol. I've never ever used a Humbrol spray. This is my first go at that. This one is light olive, so it even looks more olive drab than that, even though that's called olive drab too. So, but it is light. It says it's light, so I think I'm going to put it comparatively like this. I think. I'm reserving my thought process on these three right here. Okay, this is AK. My favorite brush-on olive drab is the AK olive drab base. And this is olive drab. And if they're anything like the Vallejos, I assume, and you know what happens when you assume, but I assume that this is going to be a match. But when I look at the board up here, the cap color, it doesn't look anything like the brush-on paint. Or I should say, it looks more brown, right, than green. Which you want a brown green, right? That's what you want. But this looks more brown than green. So what I'm going to do with this one is put it here, because that means it'll be close to these guys on my spray. That's my thought process. I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. Okay. Now, the testers in the past I have loved to death. This is one of my favorite olive drabs in the past. So I'm going to put it kind of in the middle so that I can compare it. And if you see me arranging the paint like this, because when I spray it onto the palette, I'll know where or which paint is which on the palette. And then once I get it sprayed, and I'll go ahead and mark it so I don't get them confused or mixed up. Now these two are kind of a spray that's made specifically for hunters to spray their gear, their boats, or their coolers, or their blinds, or whatever else they're taking out into the woods to go hunting with. These are they're not formulated for hobbyists per se when it comes to miniatures, but I don't have a problem exploring out of the box, right? And hopefully neither do you. So I'm going to put these probably flanking this guy in the middle. This one is called, it's from Magic, Olive Drab Green. So I'm going to put it on this side because of the green nature of these guys. But this one I've actually never used. This is another paint that I've never used. It's Hunter's Specialty olive drab. And it says flat. That's another thing. These are all flat or matte. I do think one of these says matte on it. Yeah, this one actually doesn't say flat. Every one of these spray say flat. This one even says ultra flat, even though I know that a lot of these are already ultra flat as well. But this one says matte. Matte is on the verge of being flat. It's got a little bit of gloss to it. Kind of like that tape there has a little bit of gloss compared to that cap, right? This one is fairly glossy cap. So we'll see. I don't see it anywhere on here where it says it's flat or matte. Okay, so that's going to be part of our experiment. All right, that's the way I'm going to lay it out. Let me go spray these individual swatches, and I'll be back. It's going to take me a good 10 minutes. Okay, be right back. All right, so I brought it back in, and I notated what manufacturer each one was. One thing I did want to point out is that the AK, when I was spraying it, you can see it's a lot more controlled. I actually have a lot smaller area. I actually had to move the can. Each of these other ones were pretty much just spray and complete, where this one I had to kind of spray around to get a bigger control surface. And it dried almost instantly upon contact. Like it hit it and it was dry. Where the Humbrol one had a much larger spray area. So this is a little less control. Now the Tamiya looks like it might not be fully 100% dry just yet, but that was the last one I sprayed, so I would expect that. Okay, this is the Krylon, and you can see on screen exactly how dark that is. Let me see if I can prop this up somehow. You can see exactly how dark and that green is. That green from Krylon looks a lot like the deep forest green from Rust-Oleum, right? Rust-Oleum makes a deep forest green for their camouflage set that they use. So that's what I've been kind of using. I've always trusted Krylon, and it just seems like it's just way too dark. And it's very close to the cap. So Krylon, it's out. That's just too dark. The ones I'm kind of leaning toward are these three right here. Because of their the amount of brown that's in them. These, that's a dark green as well. That is the Magic, which is this guy, and you can see that it's darker than the cap. This one is closer to that one. So Magic, too dark, in my opinion. The Vallejo one, that looks really good. Okay, the Vallejo, and there's the cap. It almost matches it exactly, and it also is more olive drab than their brush on. Their brush on olive drab matches more of the Krylon there, actually, to be honest. But right now, I think Vallejo is winning out so far. Okay, now Hunter's Specialty. Okay, if you pay $12 or $13 for a Vallejo, it might be smart to just invest in Hunter Specialty, which is only like a $5 can, because that and that are very similar in color. Testers is darker. it does match the cap, but it is much darker. Right now my Hunter Specialty, I think, cost for color, I think is the best in my opinion. Okay, AK, way out. That AK matches the cap, right? But not the swatch. The little swatch here is definitely an olive drab that looks really good, but that looks more like a tan, like an olive tan. That might be good as a what's the word I'm looking for? That might be good for the Americans when they were in the desert. That might be a great color for that. But no, I don't plan to use that. It matches the cap, which I thought was not olive drab from the beginning. Okay, now the last two to look at really is the Humbrol and the Tamiya, right? You can see the Tamiya is very dark. Tamiya and Magic are very close. It's still green. it's still green, and it is olive. It doesn't really match the cap, right? It's more appropriate. It's closer to what I'm looking for, but it's still not brown. I want a brown violet. I want a color that is going to come out drab looking, not green looking. And the Humbrol, that is your, what's the word I'm looking for? That is your traditional olive color. That is, and it matches the band on the cap to the T. It's almost exactly the same. Humbrol, olive green, looks good. It really does. It does look good, but still, it's not these guys. Okay, so in my opinion, Hunter Specialty and Vallejo and Testers are the top-notch, top three olive drabs. Now, you would have to agree or disagree. You might like the really dark colors, because what you might do is prime with this and then go back over it with a dry brush or something to bring out the color, or maybe a blend of a brush paint, or maybe something like that. But I still believe that that's too dark. One reason why, like I said, I'm going to be dropping some wash on these spare models, and I want to show you how they turn out. Now, because I only like these three, and I'm not going to test it on these guys, because I only like the Testers, the Hunters, and the Vallejo, those are the only three that I'm going to test it on. Okay, so I got these three Sherman hulls that I'm going to spray, and then we're going to take a look at what it looks like sprayed, and then I'm going to wash, and we're going to take a look at what it looks like after it's been washed. All right, give me a moment while I go spray these three. All right, guys, it brought us over to my workbench where I'm going to be able to apply the wash. We're using the Vallejo dark green wash, but I'm also going to put in about a 50% of my concoction that I created using the Flow Aid additive from Liquitex. Okay, this recommends that you put 1 drop of this and 20 parts water, right? So this to dilute it, because this is kind of like a concentrate. So you put that and 20 drops, I even marked it on here, once of this and 20 drops of water to create your concoction here, which is the Flow Aid additive. Now, I'm going to have to admit to you that this Flow Aid is a 10-to-1, not a 20-to-1, because I feel that 10-to-1 is better. Okay, that's my own personal opinion. But I'm going to put 2 drops of this, 1 drop of that, and then we're going to brush it on. I put it on this paper towel just in case any of the wash gets on my table. It'll get onto this instead, just to help clean everything up. Now, in the order, we have the Hunter Specialty Vallejo testers. Now, just looking at the camera, you're noticing, I'm noticing that the testers has the most amount of brown in it, right? That, and then the Vallejo has an okay amount of brown in it, and then the Hunter Specialty has the least amount of brown. But compared to the other paints, these 3 were the best. Those other ones were way too green. But this one has the most brown, and I think this is the color that I fell in love with, which prompted this entire experiment. So we're going to find out. Let me go ahead and mix up a batch of my wash, right? Shake this up because the color can settle. So you got to make sure this is shook up. For green models, camouflages, natural scenes, rivers, and lakes. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to put maybe 6 drops. Okay, because I'm thinking 2 drops should cover each of those tanks. And then my Flow Aid, I do shake it up. It says you don't need to, but I do. It does give a lot of bubbles. I just kind of don't concern myself with that. But I mix it up because it is a mixture. It's water and Flow Aid, and I don't know if that separates or not, so I shake it. And then we're going to give this, 3 drops, right? Because 6 and 3. That is a pretty heavy Flow Aid mix. I got a soft bristle brush here that I'm going to stir this up to make sure the wash and the Flow Aid are together. Okay, let's get this kind of out of the way. Let's do this one first. Okay, now I do want to point out that the Hunter Specialty camo did take longer to dry. The Vallejo and the testers dried right away. Now look at that, I'm really making it green. But that's an illusion. This wash with the extra Flow Aid, that is an illusion. Okay, so now let's go to the Vallejo spray. I'm trying to make sure that I get it all in the gear and cracks and stuff like that, because I really want to see how the different paints with this wash, what they look like. I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. I think I put more on that one than I did on this one. Maybe not. Maybe it was just drying. Okay, and then here we go with this one. I made a pretty good guess on the wash. The 2 drops per tank. I probably could have got away with like a 1.5 drops per tank. Okay, now this is going to take a good while. This is probably going to take about 30 minutes to dry. You can see that I still could probably do another tank or 2 with that. So let's go ahead and give it about 30 minutes to dry, and then we'll be back to compare the look. All right, so just as a casual glance of these 3, remember this is the Hunter Specialty Vallejo testers. You can see the difference that the wash made compared to the spray, which is on the sprue here, the outer part, the sprue. You can see the color of the spray compared to after you apply the wash, right? And just you can gradually see how it gets darker and darker this way with the undercoat, right? The Hunter Specialty, the Vallejo, and then the testers. And then with the wash, how it just makes it even more pronounced, right? How it even deepens it. This one looks pretty green on camera. It does look green here. That looks very dark. And that one looks perfect. That's the color that I was shooting for. We're looking at kind of a brown olive drab, and then the wash really brings out the details. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of like bring these up so you can see. So I'm going to change the focus a bit. You can see the details. You can see how it gets darker around the recesses, of course, with the turret ring, the engine compartment, and you can kind of see how that's still got that brown olive drab shade. What do they call it? Brown violet, right? So right now, I think Testers is my go-to olive drab. Okay, let's take a look at the Vallejo one. See, the Vallejo, I like it. I kind of like the effect of how the wash kind of fades in, and it gives you that multi-tone, but it's still too green. This, I don't know if it's the green wash really brought out the green, but that's still too green for an olive drab, in my opinion. That's just where the sprue connects, so ignore that. But yeah, the detailing and everything looks really good with the wash. And maybe just hasn't dried completely. Maybe that's what I'm seeing, because the back plate looks pretty good, but the rest of this looks like it's still too green. And then of course, here's the Hunter Specialty one. It's also still way too green. It's kind of a dark green, actually. It's like the wash, it's more wash color than it is the spray color. So again, maybe the wash just hasn't dried yet, but I would think it would have, because I left it out in direct sunlight for a hot minute. Literally a hot 20 minutes. Okay, but just looking at that, if you saw how I washed them, so I washed them like right after the other. So if this is dry, I would assume those would be as dry. And this one definitely looks good already. This is the testers. Yeah. Okay, so feedback or summary. Some of those colors were more green than others. The AK was actually way too tan. Yeah, the AK was way too tan. It dried fast, though. That was a big advantage. And it was also olive drab. It didn't say it was base or anything like that, so I don't know if they have multiple olive drabs, but I know their brush on says olive drab base, and it was not that color. It was more yellow, or more lighter, a lighter color. The Humbrol light olive looked really good. It was a good green, but it was more green than anything else. And of course the Krylon was way too dark. You know, it was darker than that. And then if I threw on a wash, you would never even see it because it would just be black. So I think testers is my go-to olive drab going on from now on with my Jeeps and armored cars and trucks and everything else. Now, if you personally are looking for more of a green look, then you might go with the Vallejo olive drab. Yeah, that's actually a good color, a good look. It's just, I don't know, it's just too green for me. You know, that's got too much green in it. Yeah, it looks like the wash is starting to dry up even more, so maybe it's just taking a minute. There might be chemical reactions between the Vallejo spray and their Vallejo wash, where the testers might have a more of a drying, like a faster drying. I don't know. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and exploring these paints with me and going on this journey. And if you like videos like this, be sure to comment, put a like on the video as well. And if you want to be updated whenever I upload any new videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified when I upload videos. All right, guys, I'll catch you in my next one.